First, firefighters from Canada and from Mexico are being deployed to Los Angeles as the devastating California wildfires rage for a seventh day. The governor of California, Gavin Newsom, says this could be the worst natural disaster in American history. In all, 24 people are confirmed to have lost their lives, and over 100,000 residents have been forced to evacuate. Many of those have lost their homes. Today, the largest fire in Palisades remains less than 15% contained. But some of the evacuees are nonetheless keen to return and see the destruction with their own eyes. Solange Mougin has this report.
The fires may have come and gone, burning much of everything in their wake in this neighborhood of the Pacific Palisades. But that doesn't mean the danger's past. With the National Guard blocking roads and a curfew in place from sunrise to sunset, many residents have nonetheless lined up, trying to get back into their homes, either to quickly grab beloved items or more necessities, or to simply see with their own eyes where their homes once stood.
To collect my dad's ashes, which we had to leave behind, as well as my grandma's ashes, which we also had to leave behind.
It's gotten exponentially harder to get in, rightfully so because of the looting. I did get in 2 days ago when the market burned down, and I had to turn around because the smoke and the visibility, and it's like you were in a ball of fire.
Not only do blazes continue unchecked in the Los Angeles area, but there are also added risks of something firefighters call spotting, or new blazes caused by blowing embers. The Weather Service has issued several red flag warnings of strong winds, with the greatest risk coming on Tuesday. And then there are the dangers of broken gas lines, contaminated ash, as well as unstable structures. Finally, there's also the very real risk of looting. For residents, it is a long and difficult wait.
Be frustrated, but the truth is that anybody who understands even the slightest bit about fires knows that all it needs is a good wind, and things can turn bad quickly. So I know they're doing that for everyone's safety. It doesn't make us want our belongings out of there any less.
With some 100,000 people still under evacuation orders, many residents are not only grieving their lost homes and communities, but they're also anxiously waiting it out, hoping for an end soon to the blazes.
Well, as Californians reeling then from the fires, experts around the world are starting to ask how we can better prepare ourselves for more fires in the future as the climate emergency worsens. One of those experts is Alexander Held from the Resilience Programme at the European Forest Institute. He joins us live on the programme now. Thanks for making the time. Good to speak to you.
My pleasure.
Look, when we zoom out from those scenes in California, what lessons do you, as an expert, draw in terms of fire management?
Well, with all the tragedy and catastrophe that we're observing, the fact is that a lot of experts from the fire community and from the fire science community have predicted those situations. And now we have the opportunity to really learn from the disaster and start rebuilding, reconstruction better into a more resilient future. So let's use this disaster as good as we can.
Indeed. And when it comes to thinking about climate change, of course, the top priority, or one of the top priorities, is mitigation, how we cut down on greenhouse gases, for example. But given that, experts like yourself say that the planet may well pass that 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold in the coming years, the other question becomes then how it is that we humans adapt, how we build resilience within the cities we live in to prepare ourselves for more events like this in the future. Just tell us a bit about what steps practically you think should be taken.
Well, the first prerequisite is, of course, as you mentioned, stopping the greenhouse emissions. And then in preparing a resilient situation, or more resilient situation when it comes to wildfire and urban population, it's clear we have the ingredients for fires: topography, weather, and fuel. And we can't influence topography and change the weather. So the only tool we have is addressing the conditions, the characteristics of the vegetation that is fuel for a fire. And that can be mitigated and modified to a situation where we will still have fires, but acceptable fires and manageable fires.
Look, and when we talk about reconstruction in Los Angeles in particular, how do you think homes and communities there should be rebuilt now, keeping in mind that, of course, there could be more fires on this scale to come?
Okay, there are a lot of programs out there and concepts in America and around the world, fire-wise concepts, fire-smart concepts, building, construction, guidelines, etc., in terms of how is your house prepared? How is your property prepared? How is your garden prepared? How are the roads, access for firefighters, exit for evacuations, and all that? So this is a unique chance now of rebuilding into a better future. But one of the crucial points is that the society has to accept in the future we have to manage our landscape and we have to live with fire and not, like you tried in the past, living without fire and resulting in an overgrown landscape that then goes up in flames in these severe conditions. So this is the first step to take in terms of building awareness for the society that there is no future without fire. You decide what fire and how do you like your smoke.
Look, and that is a stark sort of image that you paint for us, that these fires are going to happen sort of come what may. And that makes me think about somewhere like California, that is one of the wealthiest states in the United States, which is one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Sort of what does that tell us when we zoom out even more about what needs to be done now to support those developing countries that clearly don't have the resources of somewhere like California, but could well face devastating fires linked to climate change in the future?
Well, we see in California, as in other places that are highly developed, that in situations like this, the best fire service in the world cannot do much. So the lesson to draw from countries that are in a developing stage, or like where I'm in Germany, in a state where fires are becoming more frequent, is that we start from the start engaging in an interdisciplinary approach to managing fires, not only firefighting, not only suppression, but accepting that fire will play a role in the future. It will be there if you like it or not. And if you accept this, then you need foresters, urban planners, special planning, tourism, environment, education, all on one table to develop objectives for the future that everybody can subscribe to. But the prerequisite is accept that there will be fire and there will be smoke, and we have to find a way that we can live with that in these conditions. And it is possible.
And look, just a final question for you then. Is it possible in the future that areas like Pacific Palisades that have been so devastated now could be simply uninhabitable as a result of fire risk?
I think we as a human race are very adaptable. And we have examples from other hot and dry places in the world where if you manage sustainably and resilient, then you can live in these conditions. And there's no reason to give up. It should rather encourage us to really mitigate climate change and provide for a living environment where we can live in balance with our environment.
Alexander Hell talking to us there from the Resilience Programme at the European Forests Institute. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Well, for those who are directly caught up in the fires in Los Angeles, there are more immediate questions to answer now. Among them, will my insurance cover the rebuilding of my home? Delano D'Souza has this report.
In this Los Angeles neighborhood ravaged by wildfires, a resident returns to inspect the damage. Jesus Hernandez finds his home has been completely destroyed.
Again, you would be met with the living room, which is literally right here in this area.
As Jesus inspects what little remains, worry starts to mount.
Hopefully the insurance can pay for, most of it. If not, then we're gonna have to stay with friends or someone.
Many residents in Southern California remain anxious as insurance companies have suspended or limited their coverage in the past 2 years. In the affluent neighborhood of Pacific Palisades, thousands of contracts have been cancelled. This couple struggled but eventually found an insurance policy days before last week's fire broke out.
I wonder how many other people weren't able to get that policy at the 11th hour, because you worked very hard to get it.
Between recurring wildfires, flooding, and the risk of an earthquake, California remains costly for insurance firms eager to leave the state. Authorities have now forbidden companies from canceling policies for the next year.
So right now, my immediate goal is to make sure that we get the claims paid as quick as possible, and that we get people on the road to recovery as quickly as we can.
While experts estimate the damage and economic loss could cost between $135 to $150 billion, insurance companies could wind up paying nearly $20 billion.
Well, let's look a little now at the political fallout from the wildfires in California. Our foreign editor, Ketavan Gorjestani, with me now. And look, Ketavan, Donald Trump will be taking office a week today, and the incoming president is already pointing fingers, isn't he?
Absolutely. In the past few days, he's been attacking the Democratic leadership of the state of California, especially the governor, Gavin Newsom, who's been a longtime foe of the elected president. And mostly it has been about mismanagement of water resources. Trump accusing Gavin Newsom of being incompetent, but also more specifically of, for example, not signing a water restoration declaration. This has been looked into by U.S. reporters, and apparently there is no such document that Gavin Newsom could not have signed. What Donald Trump seems to be referring to is a sort of spat that he had with Gavin Newsom back in 2020, so during his first term, at a time when there were wildfires in California. And Donald Trump had sought to divert some water from the northern part of California through a presidential memorandum to bring it down to some of the farmlands further south, something that Gavin Newsom could not block as a governor, but opposed publicly, saying that it was bad environmentally, especially for some species that were close to extinction. It was, in the end, the California Attorney General that blocked that move by Donald Trump. But even if that is true, that this water was not brought from the north to the south, experts say that it would have had little bearing on what is happening right now in California, that this is not about a lack of water, because they point to the reservoirs in and around Los Angeles, saying that they're all pretty much at normal average levels for this time of the year, except one, which is a reservoir in the area of the Pacific Palisades that has been hit hard. This one was closed down for maintenance, and that is why it was empty. So nothing about managing the water there. The only thing that Gavin Newsom agrees with Donald Trump on is this question about why some fire hydrants were empty and were dry, and that for that he has launched an investigation. They're looking into that. Another person that's been attacked by Donald Trump also is the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass. She's been attacked for supposedly cutting the funding to the fire department of the city of Los Angeles by about $17 million. That is a little bit misleading, because yes, that budget has been cut, but the city council also, parallel to this, added $53 million in pay raises, added $58 million in new kits for the firefighters. So in the end, technically, the budget grew by 7%, not reduced. And a lot of experts also say that there's not really been an impact on the fire department's ability to fight the fire. It's just simply that the fire was too big.
Look, and the fires are still raging, Ketavan, but there are already conversations now turning to recovery and reconstruction. And on that as well, the political blame game from Donald Trump is turning towards the White House.
Yes, the FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, already saying that they've had about 24,000 people applying for federal assistance. And Donald Trump coming out recently saying that Joe Biden had left, quote, no money in FEMA. Now, it is true that the FEMA funding, or that fund, has been depleted over the past year because of the multiplication of natural disasters. But Joe Biden signed a bill back in December to replenish that fund, putting in $29 billion into that fund. So the current balance of FEMA is actually $27 billion. Now, you might say this is likely not going to be enough in order to cover all the the disaster recovery that will come from these wildfires, but also possible other natural disasters coming up. But it is not no money. But this blame game about FEMA and the role of FEMA has been something that Donald Trump has used. We saw it back in the fall during Hurricane Helene, where he accused Joe Biden of using the FEMA funds to help illegal immigrants instead of helping those harder hit areas. This is something that has also been debunked, but Donald Trump has made FEMA a target. We've seen that in the past. The question now is what he's going to do once he gets into office. He has said that broadly he wants to cut the budget of federal agencies. He hasn't spoken specifically about FEMA, but given that FEMA has been a target over and over again, there is some worry among people who work in and with FEMA that could be one of those areas where he would cut a budget. And when you see what is happening right now in California and what we've seen in the past few months in the United States, from wildfires to hurricanes, FEMA is an essential organization in the United States when it comes to that disaster recovery.
Ketivan Gorjestani, for the moment, thanks very much indeed.